to the Astute Engineer. This is our 16th episode. Really excited to have this conversation. Rachel Piper, youngest fellowship.
One of the youngest, yes. One of the youngest fellows of the ICE.
Well, the ICE can be misinterpreted when you understand what's going on with ICE in North America. But talk to me about civil engineering. So how did you get into engineering all that time?
Well, for me, it was a pasta bridge.
Right.
And I was growing up in Jersey at the time, not somewhere that necessarily has a huge amount of female engineering role models. I went to an all-girls school, and I was very lucky that some engineers had come into our school. They ran a pasta bridge competition of all things.
Okay.
I remember putting this thing together with my dad and, telling him how to layer my spaghetti and all the rest of it. And honestly, I didn't think I had a chance, but it was all about how heavy the structure could carry. And mine couldn't, be broken based on all the dairy milk chocolate bars. And so it ended up winning. And for me, I'm not sure I'd still know about engineering, let alone be the engineer I am today, if it weren't for that experience, to be completely honest.
That's quite an amazing sliding door moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be fair, I think it's one of those that sparked my interest. I was very lucky as well at the time. I was doing GCSE DT, and my teacher mentioned the Arkwright Engineering Scholarships. Again, something I hadn't heard of. And I remember going to that interview, I think it was at the University of Southampton. I'd flown over from Jersey, very nervous, was even more nervous when I turned up. And I was one of maybe only one or two females there for their interview. And at the time, our GCSE DT projects were making a piece of jewellery.
Right, okay.
And so I turn up, people have their go-karts and their Raspberry Pis or whatever at the time. And I'm trying to convince the interviewers how I can link civil engineering to a piece of jewellery, about how important it was about the detail. And for some reason, they saw something in me, and I was awarded a scholarship at the time. And that was amazing to be able to have that opportunity through sixth form to get away from the island and see all the amazing things that engineering and civil engineering could be. And that led me ultimately to go and study civil engineering at university.
That's quite amazing. I mean, I looked back through some of your early work as well, and when you actually think, even back in Jersey, you were still pushing ahead women and trying to push the boundaries of that gender gap. So what first pushed you down that route?
Honestly, I think it was turning up at that
Really?
university and just seeing the difference. And I couldn't understand why there weren't other female students like me that were considering it as well. When I did find civil engineering and engineering, I was like, wow, this is literally the perfect fit. I couldn't ever really quite find what I wanted to do. Like, I really enjoyed all subjects at school, and so I thought maybe architecture, but it wasn't quite there in terms of the maths and the science, which ultimately, obviously, engineering was for me. And so hence why, again, fantastic teacher at the time, had co-founded a charity called the International Women's Academy. And it was all about trying to encourage, young female students to think beyond and do something that maybe others wouldn't have dared to do at the time. So, I was in I think I was in year 12. And at the time, I thought, okay, I'll start by just running a female engineering competition for school students in Jersey, make them start thinking about it. And that went really well. I managed to get sponsorship from local companies. It was the Island Games that year as well, so I managed to get the team winning tickets and iPads, and it was amazing. We had entries from all the schools, and my teacher said, "Why don't you do this globally?" And I was like, I'm just a student in Jersey. What am I meant to do? And amazing, even then, like, we're not even in a post-COVID world where we're all connected, but sending emails and knocking on doors at the Women's Engineering Society, or I remember speaking to an engineering society in Canada, and they were promoting it and using the International Women's Academy. And I then ran a global engineering competition. We had entries from Nepal, India, across the UK. And I remember saying to my headmaster, "Oh, I'm going to have to take a day off school, I'm flying to Southampton." What are you doing that for? "Oh, I've got to go do this award ceremony and give the winning team that was in Southampton their prizes." And yeah, it was, again, it was amazing to see the impact that you can have just as a, 17-year-old in Jersey at the time. And it's amazing now I think that's probably what's fueled me to continue volunteering and planting the seed. Because if those engineers had never planted the seed for me with that Pastor Bridge, I'm not sure I'd be here today.
And look, it's so inspiring. And I think that I've mentioned before on previous podcasts, I've got 2 daughters, and I've been in this industry for 30 odd years, and there is a huge gender gap. You go to some of the biggest exhibitions in defence and aerospace, and it's a middle-aged white man.
Yeah.
And you've touched on it before, and something that I'm very much a believer in, that imposter syndrome that we all have.
Yeah.
But even more so as a female coming into a very much male-dominated. So how did you tackle that imposter syndrome? Because it sounds like from an early age you went and hit it head on.
Yeah, I suppose sort of. I mean, again, you've probably got to add in the fact that I went to an all-girls school as well. I was probably quite lucky in many ways, though, because I think I did get an innate sense of confidence and belief from being in that environment growing up. I also have a brother, and growing up, I played cricket, football, rugby. I watch rugby. I'm a big Bath supporter. I'm a big Liverpool supporter. So it means...
We can cut this.
Can we cut this now? I do apologise. But it's like, it gives you conversation starters with I don't know, possibly it's something that men enjoy a bit more. And I could talk about it as well. So probably that helped. But I still... will never forget the feeling of kind of going to my first construction site on my summer placement when I was at uni, living in the middle of, comparatively nowhere. I was just it was Bridgewater. It was great. The project was fantastic. Again, great experience to fully and properly understand what this industry is about, being on site and seeing how things are built. But you turn up and you're one of the only females in the office, let alone then going on site. There were maybe a couple of us, if that. And it is daunting. And I think at times you feel like you have to work that bit harder to earn people's trust and respect. Whether that's because you're female, whether that's because you're young, again, it's probably natural for everyone. If you come across a new individual you haven't met before, you're not going to trust them straight away. But I always look back on that time as well and think, well, maybe I was also putting that on myself to feel like, I needed to work that bit extra. But I don't regret it, because I look at where I am now and I don't think I'd be here if I hadn't have gone that extra bit. And so it's a flip side, isn't it? There's a piece of I actively and I continue to try and create a hopefully better industry, better culture where females don't feel like that. But there's also a piece of, do I regret it? No, because actually by working that bit harder, I think I am the engineer I am today.
Look, I think that's important, whether you're male or female. But it is very difficult to stand out when you're young. And when you're a young female in a male-dominated industry, you have 2 choices. It's you can tackle it and prove yourself, as you have done, or you can stay in the shadows. But you've actually created a pathway for others now. I think that's one thing you should be very proud of. You've set a standard and some examples that people can follow. So you had, you must have had a mentor or somebody that inspired you to keep pushing the boundaries. Where did you get that from?
I've had a number of mentors, and I think it's important to say that I think quite often we maybe hear the word mentor as a single mentor, and we think, yes, we need to attach and latch ourselves onto that one person. I've always been a bit of a believer of it's important to get other people's perspectives and different perspectives. So, for example, at work, I have a mentor who is, quite a few rungs up the ladder, but sort of in the direction, project leadership or operational leadership that I would like to see, possibly me going in that general sense of direction. So he's a great individual from that perspective. But I also have a very senior female in the business who works in finance, right. High up for globally for WSP. And it's like, again, that's a completely different perspective. I don't then start talking about technical stuff because she would have no idea what I'm talking about. But again, we can have different conversations and look at things in different ways, which enables me to then learn and grow and develop that side of me that I want to as well. But I'd say at an early age, there were some incredible trailblazing civil engineers. One, Linda Miller. I was at school at the time and I was running this engineering competition. And again, it's like so much of my life has been sort of sliding door moments. My music and maths teacher had gone to the UK for a conference and Linda was speaking. And for some reason he felt, I'll go up to her and say, I've got this aspiring engineer, could you have a conversation with her or something? I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. So I come into school on the Monday, he's like, gives me a telephone number because, there's not, I don't know, and says, call this person, she's keen to speak to you. So I call this person and it turns out she's project manager running Farringdon Crossrail station. And so this is quite a woman. And before I know it, she's inviting me, like, we can't pay you, but I had my Arkwright scholarship money. If you would like to come over, we had family, friends who live nearby in London, you're more than welcome. And so I'd come over in my summer holidays, in Easter. When I came to university, I would get the train from Bath to London and see the team for a couple of days. And this went on for a few years. Wow. But again, that kindness and generosity and how she ran her site, like everyone had so much respect from her. She knew everyone's name from the bottom to the top. And that's how, when you see those models of leadership and just someone who was remarkable and created that culture that, something that I want to create as well, hopefully moving forward, you can't but, feel inspired by that and gives you confidence. It's that whole, if you can see it, you can be it. And we actually have a campaign within WSP that does that. At the end of the day, if you can't see it, it can make it more difficult to feel like you can do it and get the confidence you can do it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, we've taken some of the members here on women in defence, and they get to work with mentors in the forces, but also in industry.
Yeah,
and that's proved really successful. We've also carried out a number of training courses on 7 pillars, and very much about tackling the imposter syndrome and empowering that confidence in women in work. But it's actually men in work as well. I think I think you're creating a pathway for women to be successful, and there should be no barriers. But I think in engineering, the word engineering kind of has a stigma that it's a male-dominated industry. So how do you get that across young girls to convince them that that's not the case?
It is really, for me, that STEM outreach. Right. And it's especially, I think quite often we might focus on like more like older kids, their GCSEs, A-levels, because we want to get them into the industry at that point. But I would argue sometimes, and I do support individuals, in those age groups as well in many ways, but I think it's also important to talk to the primary school kids. I think there are studies out there that show, I don't know exactly the number, but I think it's maybe by 7, they can also form an opinion of what they can't be.
Yep.
And so if their interactions of engineering are males, or maybe someone who fixes their boiler, or, it's like, then it's harder to convince otherwise. Whereas if their first interaction is, oh, a female engineer has come in and, she's built a hospital, she's built a nuclear power station, she's helped all these people, she, leading teams to design a railway, it's that, oh, well, maybe I can do that. But also for the young male kids in the classroom as well, for them then it's normal for an engineer to be female. And you don't have this, exercise where you go and speak to primary school kids and ask them to draw an engineer. They're more likely to I don't know, some kids in the class might actually draw a female because that might have been their first interaction with engineering. Yeah. So it's really, you might not realise how powerful those early interactions can be.
And do you feel in the last 5 to 10 years there's been a shift?
I think it is changing. I mean, if I just look at, Jersey and my school, for example, and, there were very few of us, maybe one in every few years that would go and study engineering. Now it's quite common that there's multiple in every year group that are going to study engineering. That's fantastic. In what, a period of, I left school, probably about 10 years ago. So in a decade, that shift. I was asked to go back and judge their F1 STEM racing competition, and they had schools from the whole island, teams of females, males. It was probably a 50-50 split of students. The work they're doing, but it's just igniting that passion. And you speak to so many of them and they're like, yeah, I want to do engineering. And it's like, wow, like what a shift. They actually know what the word engineering is, and they're excited about it enough that they want to go and pursue a career in it. Yeah, like, can't ask anything more. And I think it just shows that the power of even taking an hour a month to go and speak to a school. And I think in this day and age as well, we're so lucky. We don't have to now physically go into schools like we can do, and I'm very lucky. At WSP, we get 2 volunteering days a year. I tend to use those to try and, actually physically go into a school and run something with the kids, and that's fantastic. But there's also a piece now where, I can take half an hour of my day, with my WSP flex hour, and, be talking to, delivering a lesson to 1,000 primary school students across Scotland on forces. And again, it's making it more accessible. And I think for me, I'm really behind it, having grown up and lived in quite a remote community. Engineering now is for everyone. And it's, we just need to plant those seeds, and especially for those schools that might be more remote, there's no reason why they can't pursue a career in our industry, no matter where in the world you live.
I think we touched on it earlier. Since COVID, one of the positives that's come from COVID is that remote learning, remote work, that interaction that you can have, and you can add value from quite a sizable distance. Yeah. But one thing it does, I do think that's missing since COVID from an engineering perspective is the water cooler conversations. Those conversations you would have with a much senior and more experienced engineer who you would bump in and you would check some notes out together. So how do you see the experienced engineer supporting what you're trying to do with some of the young outreach?
I think the outreach, there's absolutely no question. It's easier now for an experienced engineer to speak to thousands of people, do you know what I mean, at a time, especially in terms of the school kids and everything. As I said, in half an hour, you can reach thousands of people and plant the seed. And again, they might be in communities where they don't have, do you know what I mean, an engineer that can take the time. But also, we're all really busy people. Let's not, our jobs are intense. So actually, it's much easier to be sat at your desk and do half an hour than have to carve out 3 hours to physically go somewhere. I think in terms of developing maybe our graduate engineers and those that are entering in the industry, I definitely have seen the value myself, having started off my, working life on construction sites and physically being there every day. If there was, I don't know, an hour spare where I'd been a bit keen and done my task a bit early, I would just put my hard hat on and nip out on site and go and ask someone who's installed drainage for 30 years, some more questions and pick their brain a little bit. And that created, I think that helped build that trust, that respect, that, people like talking about what they're good at.
Yep, absolutely.
And also you then learn, you're like a sponge basically. And I saw the benefit of that. But I think there's also a piece of seeing it now as an opportunity, that you're not just limited to a knowledge pool of like everyone who's in your physical vicinity. I've been incredibly lucky at WSP that it's not too difficult for me very quickly to be able to send a Teams message to someone going, oh, I'm looking for somebody who has knowledge or experience in X, and within one conversation, I've probably then got to that individual who is probably world leading in terms of what their knowledge, and being able to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them. But I think in terms of those water cooler conversations, building that rapport, it was definitely a shift for me, moving from contracting to consultancy, leading teams where you're with people 100% of the time, face to face, to working with hundreds of people you might never, ever meet face to face. And how do you do that? But I think it's, again, taking those learnings from the face to face, starting a conversation, starting a meeting with, how are you? Like, how's things going? How's the golf? How's the whatever? You get to know people. You can still get to know people. You just have to be a little bit more conscious, maybe, about it.
But you've clearly got a curious mind. And I quite often say, every day is an opportunity to learn. And
Massively.
we can continue learning. I think that that things have changed. And I think with podcasts, talked about listening to a podcast yesterday coming up, and you can gather so much information. Everything's there for you.
Yeah.
But you've then got to actually put that into practice and actually disseminate what's actually good for you, because sometimes there's information overload that you really shouldn't park, and especially as you're a Liverpool fan. But with that you've got a thirst and a desire for knowledge to learn. So you must have come a long way with being confident enough to reach out to these people. But I guess in the early days, you must have actually hit some brick walls as well. How did you tackle that when people were not so receptive?
Yeah, and I think that's where probably early days I went in as a, summer placement student, and I just tried to show a real interest in what everyone was doing. So as I said, whether that be someone who's installed 30 years of drainage, I would ask them so many questions. Right. And again, whether it was the piling teams, whether it was the rebar teams, whatever it was, I was just so curious and I wanted to learn. I remember, again, sat in the office and you do a piece of work early. And again, I'd recommend this to any kind of early career professional, sitting, listening perhaps. And you sit there and you get that moment, don't you? And you go, well, I could just sit here and try and look busy.
Yep.
And it's that, I would have a look around and the planner looks sort of a little bit free. So again, I would just go up and say, look, I'm not sure if you're free now for a conversation, but happy to schedule something in, but I'm just really curious. What are you doing? And what do you do? And can you talk to me about it? And can I learn? And I had these conversations with everyone from, health and safety to the project leader, and you learn so much. And then now I suppose being a project manager myself, for a major project, it's that you've built that awareness and understanding and knowledge from the ground up. And I think that imposter syndrome, I still feel it in terms of you have conversations with whatever the team or the discipline is. And I don't know absolutely everything because I don't do their job in and out 100% of the time. But for me, it's about acknowledging that that's their job. My job's something different. My job is actually understanding enough about what everyone's doing and joining the dots and actually recognizing that's a skill in itself. You know, I thought that, I don't know, maybe that's everyone could do that. I don't know everything about bridges and I don't know everything about, I don't know, P6 Primavera program, you know, whatever it is. But I don't need to. That's not my job.
Yep.
And but again, I think being in that project manager role, having that curiosity, asking those questions, it makes those people feel respected, valued. It makes them feel like they're playing a crucial part as well. We're all just part of a massive jigsaw puzzle, and it's about making sure everyone's in the right place so that that jigsaw is all kind of built correctly, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it leads on quite nicely actually, because we've just set up an AI strategy group where we're looking at the benefits of AI, and we're embracing it. We know that there's some real benefits. But I'm clearly not the smartest guy in the room when it comes to AI. And I'm more than happy to allow others to take the lead and just learn from that. And it's amazing what AI could do. But how's AI going to impact engineering?
Oh, massively. I mean, I think we're already kind of seeing it within the industry. And I think it's about embracing it and not being scared of it. You know, how many revolutions have we, or, you know, or evolutions, however you want to call them, you know, that we've gone through in this industry, whether it be other forms of digital technology, whether it be health and safety. You know, I feel like we're on the same journey with inclusion and belonging, diversity as well, you know. It's the same with AI. I think it's about not being scared to use it, but also not relying on it. And I think it's very much like when we use finite element analysis, we're mindful of the fact that garbage in equals garbage out. So there's also a piece of we can't just put stuff in blindly, expect it to come out and give us the perfect answer and just use it without being the engineer, analysing it, assessing it. Does it make sense? You know, actually step back and ask those questions. And if you do, then brilliant. And we can use it to help and be more efficient and all the rest of it, which is all really good things. But it's also just, not completely trusting it blind.
And I think the important thing is to keep that humanised content with that.
Massively.
You know, put some guardrails in place.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping what will happen is we'll all have content and knowledge at our fingertips, but actually be more consultative with another human.
Yeah.
And discuss the output rather than just believe the output.
Exactly. You cannot just believe it blind. It's like if just somebody came up to you in the street and said that as a fact, you're not going to just blindly trust it. You know,
some
do
people
your
do.
due diligence.
Some people do, and I think
we wouldn't be good engineers if we didn't.
Exactly. But I think also from where you sit now, and you made the point earlier, it's not just about the engineering side of it. It's that project management and the people management.
Yeah.
And there is definitely people out there who believe everything they read or everything they hear, and we've gone through the fake news, and it's actually been able to listen to them and then try to guide them back in place. And I mean, some of the projects you're working on, you've got hundreds of people. We've got offices all around the world here, and different cultures, different behaviours. It's a different interpretation of the facts, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I think it all comes back to culture, and which is why I'm a big believer of if we create this right culture, that's why inclusion, creating that sense of belonging is so important, and modelling that and creating that on your own teams. And understanding those differences, you know, but also if you can have an impact and create that wider in the business. So I'm currently chair of Transport and Infrastructure for UK and Ireland, our Inclusion and Belonging Committee. And, you know, rather than just talking the talk, where I think walking the walk, you know, whether it's campaigns like If You Can See It, You Can Be It, whether it's, you know, we run Let's Talk About, and we host panel sessions every 2 months. And we talk about different topics. You know, the last series we did was on valuing difference. But again, it's about being intentional with the wording of this as well and bringing as many people to the conversation. We could have had Let's Talk About Women, for example, but we didn't. We called it Let's Talk About Gender, and we had I think we had about 47% men join that session.
Right. That's good.
That's fantastic. You know, we need to be having these conversations all together, understanding different people's perspectives, you know, and at the end of the day, valuing all of our differences and seeing, like, how can we harness all of our differences to create high-performing teams? Because ultimately, that's what we want. Yeah. And especially in infrastructure, you know, we're designing infrastructure and building infrastructure for all walks of life. We need to make sure that all walks of life are represented in our design teams and considering all these other aspects and factors. And that ultimately leads to us creating those better designs, I think. But again, you can have the diversity, but if you don't have that sense of inclusion and belonging, that people feel like they can challenge safely, they can speak up, they can share their thoughts, opinions, and you come out with a better solution, then, you know, I don't think you can really harness that full power of a diverse team.
Yeah, and it's we've done a lot of personality traits.
Oh, yes.
You don't want a whole room of greens.
No. It was actually one of our Let's Talk About sessions in our last series. Our first one was, and we had a panelist from each of the colours, red, yellow, green, blue. And again, you know, it's also accepting that we're all different in so many ways. I think too often we think, oh, it's gender, it's a gender conversation, it's a race conversation. It's not.
Absolutely
it's
not.
Like we've grown up in different places. We now live in different places. We have different family lives. We have different responsibilities, and all these differences, they're like Venn diagrams, how I see them. It's like, yeah, we could see it that look at all these ways that we're all different, but our Venn diagrams also intersect at so many different ways. And it's also trying to find those common grounds as well sometimes to build that sense of inclusion and belonging. And then that's when you feel safer with your differences, that you can still contribute to that conversation. Absolutely. That's how I see it. I don't see this inclusion and belonging conversation just about gender, just about races. It's just making everyone feel like they're valued.
And I quite like the way that have you read Surrounded by Idiots?
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
And it's not about male, female, young, old.
No.
You are this colour, and the way you're interpreting another colour. And I think it's a really good way of portraying it, because sometimes you can come across, in fact, one of the things we talked about recently, trying to get people to understand that not all experts in the fields look the same. And you could spend all year trying to teach a fish to climb a tree, and it's not going to happen, is it?
No, exactly.
So, but I do think it's also you've obviously got a whole thirst of knowledge that you just keep trying to be curious, and I love that. I do worry though, since COVID, that next generation that you're targeting, some of the early age STEM primary schools and even in secondary school, have lost some social skills.
Yeah.
Kind of hiding behind the laptop or behind the phone. How do you encourage them to interact? Because that's going to be your biggest challenge. Yeah,
and that was the thing. Actually, one of our recent ones was Let's Talk About Generations as well. And we had everyone from Gen Z to a baby boomer on that. And it's remarkable when you see that difference. You know, baby boomers saying, when we were first interacting with clients, we would receive a letter. We'd then look at the letter. We would think about the letter. We would draft a response. We'd send it to the typist. They would then type the letter out, and then that would, you know, get delivered in the post. Now you get a Teams message from a client. They want something. You're then on the phone. You know, and it's all instantaneous. And it's the same. You know, I think we've got to be mindful of that, and making sure that our kind of the generation coming through don't see that Teams message coming through and see it's a text that they have to respond to straight away. It's absolutely fine to say, you know, again, don't take as long as it would in the past to send a letter and all the rest of it. But there's also a place and time to also say, look, you know, I'm actually dealing with something else right now, or there's another priority, or I actually can't provide you with an answer right now. Because I feel like sometimes we rush into, which is the most dangerous thing to do, is rush into like, oh yeah, we'll provide you an answer straight away. And that's not the way. And it's just making sure that the generation coming through don't see it like a text that they have to respond to straight away, but also aren't scared of picking up the phone. You know, we're having this conversation about they would more likely to send a Teams message rather than pick up a phone or arrange a meeting or something like that. And I think it's just making sure they understand the importance of misinterpretation sometimes when things are written. And actually, for them also seeing that if you have a conversation with someone, it might not necessarily, like, there might be meeting minutes generated, but you're more likely to be able to work together and come up with the right solution, rather than if you just send a Teams message back or email back saying X, that's something they can hold you to. Like, that's a physical thing that you've written, and actually understanding the importance of that as well. So I think it's just having those conversations, changing the mindsets, making people think differently. But as I said, building those professional skills are so important. And it's something that I look back on, and I think quite often we think about engineering as being a really technical profession, and it is, and we need incredibly high-skilled technical professionals in it. But as we spoke about earlier, the amount of multidisciplinary large teams we work on, those professional skills, and too often they're called softer skills, and I think professional skills is the right term for them, because softer skills implies they're less important. I don't think they are. I look at where I am, and I would say arguably the professional skills have got me further maybe than my technical skills. And it's making sure that through our education system, through our university engineering, you know, degrees as well, we do place importance on and we have education around those professional skills as well, because ultimately we're not going to be able to run these high performing teams if we don't have that importance and we don't develop those professional skills, communication, interpersonal, leadership, management. But I think it's also highlighting that you don't just get those from sitting in a lecture theatre and someone talking to you about it. And that's what I speak to a lot of the school students I talk about with. It's like, join the hockey team, go play golf, you know, go sing in a choir, or join the debating team, whatever it is, all these different things. This is where you develop those interpersonal and professional skills. You know, I think, you know, we don't just learn from being taught and sitting in classrooms about these things. It's actually more experiencing and having conflict in your sporting team and resolving that, perhaps because you're captain, or, you know, ultimately you want the team to win. That's where we develop those, I think.
I think you're right. I think, you know, if you look back through your career and you know, all the sports you've done, and now you're an avid golfer as well. But I think those soft skills is the wrong terminology. I agree with you. But the social skills, I think if we can encourage that for that next generation, don't hide behind the phone, explain and educate about how you'll interpret a message one way because of the emotion that you've currently come off the last message.
Yeah.
So you can completely get the sentiment wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a conversation, you can correct it immediately.
Yeah, you notice that facial expression.
And I think that if you look at the communication skills and how much is actually done through the body rather than the voice, and when you actually look at today, text messages and whatever, no, not text messages these days, but WhatsApp messages or TikTok, everyone's waiting for that blue tick.
Yeah.
And then it's, okay, how long do I need to wait before somebody answers? Well, in a professional world, if you react that way, you're going to get more answers incorrect than you are correct.
Definitely.
You're going to misinterpret the sentiment of the question. But that's the instantaneous world we're living in, though, isn't it? But with an engineering, somebody young coming into an engineer environment now, do you try to encourage them to take your time, take a deep breath, analyze, and then react.
Yeah, exactly. And if it needs a conversation, it's fine to go back and say it needs a conversation, or if it needs more thought, that's fine. It's getting out of this, yeah, as we said, you know, thinking that it's instantaneous, and so you need to provide an instantaneous response, and that's where it's that, you know, independent judgment, you know, that they have within the professional institutions, you know, that they need to be demonstrating that, you know, and they demonstrate that by taking that step back and not just kind of seeing understanding there are like personal and professional kind of boundaries, and they're two different spaces. And even though it might feel like on the surface it's the same thing, it's not.
And I agree. Where does a young female male, where do they learn that? How do they learn it?
I mean, again, I suppose in some circumstances, I like the saying that, yeah, you should learn from other people's mistakes, not yours. So again, it's lessons learned. It's, you know, we've got we've got other things within the industry where we can learn from others' mistakes and stuff like that. I think it's also, so I think there's a piece about, you know, if you can create an environment perhaps that they do learn that and the repercussions in a safe environment. So it might be in an internal setting, you know, and you know, but I think it's also providing that guidance, that mentorship. We also have buddies in place with people who might only be a little bit, you know, a couple of years above them, a year above them. But again, I go back to it's creating that culture where they feel like they can ask the question. If they're scared because, you know, they've not seen anyone, or they don't feel they've built that relationship up with anyone to be able to ask the question, or then that's where sometimes they will panic and possibly react in that way. So it's just providing the right people around them for them to be able to learn in that safe and controlled environment.
Yeah, and I think it's important to empower people to fail and then just help them back up.
Yeah.
And then let them fail again.
Yeah.
Because that's how we learn. So I guess lots of what you're doing is bringing the pathway into engineering, encouraging people that if you can see it, you can achieve it, which I love that. But what about retention? Because keeping the industry exciting is not always the easiest challenge. So how do you keep people believing?
And I think that's where, again, I probably will come back to creating that right culture. You know, at the end of the day, you know, retention is something that I'm really passionate about, especially when I'm actively going out and trying to encourage all these young people into the industry. I want to also make it wouldn't sit morally right with me if I wasn't trying to make this industry better because of perhaps things I've experienced or others have experienced, and not wanting others to go through the same. And I was very fortunate to become one of the ICE President's Future Leaders under Keith Howes in 2023. And it was interesting at the time. I was working in construction. All the other future leaders, there were 6 others, were working in consultancy and design. And we had a conversation. Again, it's building those networks, having those conversations beyond just your immediate, and seeing the power of that. And we were reflecting on our experiences and the experiences of others and the differences of working, contracting, consultancy. And I wanted to use that platform to be able to say, look, there is still not good things going on in this industry, and we need to make it better. We have an obligation to make it better. And so kind of raised concerns with the ICE president and led a sexual harassment survey. And we had nearly 1,000 female ICE members respond. And, you know, you read through and you hear some of the stories, and it's not about scaring people and making them feel like then they don't want to join this industry. At the end of the day, we read these stories across society, don't we? But there's also a part to recognise that this is still around in engineering, and we have an opportunity here to recognise that and make it better. So, for example, I think the findings were kind of 70% of women in contracting had experienced sexual harassment in the last 4 years. So that was written intentionally. So it wasn't, we can just say, oh, this happened ages ago. No, in the last 4 years. So it was kind of a year pre-COVID, COVID, and then a year post-COVID, and 40% of women still in consultancy. And you just think about that figure. That's a lot of people. That's 2 in 3 like in a short period. And I think one of the other findings was that concerned me was that 86% of the time that it was reported, it didn't solve it, had a negative outcome.
Right.
And that, I think, it was something for me that was like, I think there's a failing here in our reporting systems, not just, I don't think it's limited just to gender. That's probably, across the board. And we need to do better. You can't read those, and there's so many stats out there, and, it's horrible. And it's about saying, look, we as a profession need to acknowledge that we can do better, but see it as an opportunity, as a positive thing, that if we can create an environment, we can stop that leaky pipe, we can bring these great people in, and they are more likely to stay if they don't have to experience that. Engineering's a fantastic place. I've loved my time and I've learned so much, but there's also bits of it that I'm sure most female engineers would say, yeah, I wish that hadn't have happened. And those are the conversations. I recently was installed as a member of the Worshipful Company of Engineers, and I was speaking to some of their members who were in their 70s, 80s, and we were having quite a sad conversation about how they felt that actually maybe the industry now is harder to be a woman in than when they were in the industry. They were describing how on site there would be kind of one foreman who, they would, if there was a problem, they would go to that individual and it was just sorted. And, it was dealt with and it didn't continue. Whereas I think now it's always hard. He said, she said, no one wants to sometimes make a decision. And this is where I think it flags that, we can do better. And that's why I've spent a lot of time trying to work in this space and do better. And at the moment developing something called the Inclusion Hub Exchange with a few other people from the ICE, but also across the wider built environment, which will hopefully provide safe spaces for people to be able to share kind of what's going on, for us to have a better line to be able to go directly to the institutions and say, look, from the ground, this is what needs to change. But also kind of just try and more broadly make organisations, companies think about what can we do better in this space, with regards to reporting, and just being more aware of it. I think too often you say those figures and a lot of people are shocked, because I think a lot of people's immediate reaction is, oh, I thought this happened ages ago. I didn't think this happened now. And that's the thing. It's about providing a space where we can say, no, it's not a side of the industry, it's not a side of society that we're proud of. But as an industry, we do also need to be aware that this is still an issue and do what we can to be able to consciously make decisions to make this industry an even better place, to keep all the amazing talent we're getting into the industry, and create that environment and culture where people can truly thrive.
Yeah, and I think you've mentioned many times, and I always echo it, building that culture, people will want to stay.
Exactly.
And people will want to develop, and actually you get the best out of people.
Exactly.
And I think I could talk to you pretty much all day. Maybe we should go on a golf course.
Maybe that can be another one.
There you go. But you've had a very successful career and you've done some amazing things, and you should be very proud of that. Give me one bit of wisdom that you would give to a young, inspiring engineer or somebody thinking about coming into civil engineering.
I think it'd be curious, be a sponge, just keep exploring this industry, not only civil engineering, but the wider engineering industry. There is so much out there, and there's probably stuff you don't even know about. So ask questions, be curious, develop that knowledge, understanding, and then before you know it, that path will almost like reveal itself to you.
Yeah, I think that's the. I like that. I like that a lot. So you obviously like your podcasts, and you read a lot of crazy books, similar to me, I guess. So, what a book that stands out for you that's helped you along the way?
I think I'd probably say I don't know if you've read it. It's Legacy.
Oh yeah,
by James Kerr, of course.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you love Bath rugby as well.
I mean, partly. I was actually, when I went out to Australia and visited the Australia business with Lang O'Rourke at the time, and it was a gift they gave me. Yeah. They gave all of their kind of leaders and stuff, and read it, and just so many things stuck with me. I think the most powerful one was just trying to leave the jersey in a better place. Oh, yeah. And I think as managers, leaders, engineers, whatever you are, I think it's understanding that you don't need necessarily a title to be a leader.
Nope, absolutely.
You have the opportunity to kind of
100%. But I think
make things better.
Legacy, there's a few things that stand out. I'd absolutely leave the jersey in a better place. You're creating pathways for people.
Yeah.
I think the Dan Carter sweeping the floors, to me,
I know
that you've got one of the best players in the world who's still humble, and still wants to demonstrate that actually I'll do the hard graft and I'll show you that when you get to that the peak of your performance, you still have to put a shift in.
Yeah, I remember, honestly, I remember reading that and then going onto one of the sites we were building a hospital at the time, and it would always be Thursdays. Project leader would come down, walk around, and everyone would be like, "Well, we've got to tidy up." And I remember going, "Well, if Dan Carter can, you know, be on the broomstick, so can I." So
yeah, that's a great book. I love that book. And there's lots of inspirational books, but that one stands out.
That's always one that's top of the list, I'd say.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you so much for having me.
I mean, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, and you've only got to look at where you are and how you've got there. That's hard work, determination, and being curious. And any engineers, any young females who want to get in, you're an inspiration for them.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
Thanks for your time.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks very much for listening. It's been an amazing conversation. I'm sure you'll be inspiring the next generation of young male and female engineers. Wherever you listen to your podcast, whatever social channel, please reach out. Any messages, any ideas you'd like us to introduce, some conversation pieces. We're still learning. I think you'll understand from this that we're always learning. Listen to some of the other podcasts. Natalie's one works really nicely here as well. And thanks for listening.